Hi, and welcome to Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. We're going to do a flight in the Cessna 172 Skyhawk without the G1000, and I'm really trying to show you an ILS landing in this video. That is the goal and objective. I will still show you a cold and dark start and do a short flight, but we're going to be flying to Haneda International Airport. So I'm really intending for this video to be a very short one. Let's get started. Now, start the plane however you like, but I'll show you how I'm doing it quickly. Just fuel pump and beacon, the master and the alt battery on. I'm going to go down to here and open fuel valve, push that in. I'm just going to put the throttle at around about 20%. I'm just going to turn off the fuel pump and turn the key around. As I say, start it however you like. Make sure that you have a parking brake on if you need it. Otherwise, put your feet on the brakes, on the foot pedals, and then the plane won't move. Now I'm just going to put on an avionics left and right. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up to here where it says CDI. Now I've tried both of these. They both work with ILS. I'm going to use the top one. On the CDI here, I'm going to left click once so it says GPS, just so we're ready before we take off. Okay, so now let's go have a little look at what our plane is doing on the outside. If you want to take the parking brake off, left control and Q. And I did see someone ask, how can you use the brakes if you don't have pedals? Well, if you use the numlock pad, and you push the delete or full stop button or decimal button on the numlock pad, that will use the brakes. You can see that's all I'm pushing at the moment, just on the numlock pad. So yeah, hopefully that helps you. Make sure you got the numlock on and then push the delete full stop decimal button at the bottom of your numlock pad. That will give you your wheel brakes. It will apply brakes, I believe, to left and right. But if you're just needing to quickly stop the plane and you haven't got your feet on the brake pedals, that's something you can do. So let's get this plane off and up into the air. As I say, I'm really trying to concentrate on the ILS part of this video. That way you can go off and you'll know how to do ILS after this. So let's get us into the sky. We're almost on the runway now. I'm just going to give it full throttle. I'm going to take off around about between 50 and 60. You can give it some flaps if you want with F7 on the keyboard. Just keep putting the flaps down. It'll help it take off even more. But there we go. Just before 60, it's going to take off easily. Push F5 on the keyboard to bring the flaps back in. And then that's it. If you compare this plane to the Carenado model, if you're taxiing around on the ground and you turn really steeply, the wings will actually hit the ground. That's impossible to do with these default planes. You can take a really, really sharp turn and the wings will just never touch the ground. So it uses a slightly different flight model. But this plane is still excellent to learn in. If you're wanting to give the 172 a go, it comes with the game. I've deliberately wanted to make sure I include one of the default planes in this video and include both of them. I didn't want to just do the G1000 version because a lot of people may not have that plane. So I will show the G1000 version as well, but this is just the normal version, which comes with the default version of the game. And even the Haneda Airport is one of the improved airports, but that comes with the default version of the game. So everyone should have that improved airport. So that's really good as well. That's one of the reasons why I've chosen this airport. Just watching my altitude here. So if we have a look at our map, you can see what we're doing today. I'm going to take a flight around to Nylon, Nifty, and back to RJTT. So this is a very short flight. It means there's a little bit of pressure to make sure that we're ready and I can fit everything in. Just coming up to 1000. As soon as we get around 1500, I'm going to switch on the autopilot and that will give me a little bit of space to start talking about the ILS. So we're almost there. We're 1100 at the moment. I may push it along a little bit to try and gain our altitude. We seem to be doing fine. So the big thing is just make sure you got CDI here. It's on GPS mode. You'll also see up here it says GPS. Just at this point in time we want that because we have not programmed anything in the plane yet. Now look in the description for the timestamp for the ILS landing and also for the ILS information. I'll put that in the description of the video. You can see we're about 1500 here now. 1400, 1500 will do for me. Going to go down to here. I'm going to click on Engage Autopilot. Then I'm going to click on Altitude Hold. It's got 1500 in there. And then I'm going to click on Nav, ARM Nav mode. So I did three things. I clicked on autopilot, I clicked on altitude hold, and then I clicked on nav. Now that plane's going to look after us and make sure we don't crash and die while I'm looking at the screen. So that's all safe and good. Let's now talk about the ILS. Now you can use both of these. I'm going to use the top one of the two, of these two. And you'll see in here it's got 124 in a very light blue. Now that's the current one that's selected. We want to swap this at the moment from COM radios to the navigation radios, the V-log. Down here you'll notice it says push C/V. If you actually click on those words, push C/V, it'll swap it over, the light blue thing over here. Now the active number is the one in white, 110.50. The number we need today is 108.10. So the first thing we do is we change this number down here. We can do that with this switch down here again. The big wheel on the outside changes to 113, and the little wheel on the inside changes to 90. So if you put the mouse cursor around about here on top of the outside number and use the mouse wheel while scrolling above it, you'll notice you can change it. So I'm just going to change it to 108. Now I've got to change to 90. So to change the small number, I just push the mouse cursor around about here. I know this works, okay? So I put the number around about here, and then I'm just going to roll the mouse wheel until we get to 10. Now I know this video will capture my mouse cursor, so that should also help you. I'm going to swap these two around to make the 108.10 the active one. So I'll left click once, and that changed. You can notice this changed, but it'll also change it to white. I'll change the other number just to practice. So I'm using the outside wheel. We're going to change that to 108, and I use the inside wheel, and we just change that to 10. Okay. So now we've got the navigation 108.10 on both of them. Now you'll notice that does not change this one down here. The 110.50, they're still different. You can use both of these, as I say. I'm just demonstrating with the top one. But just keep in mind that if you change this up here, it's not changing it down here. Okay, cool. So now we have to get ready for our actual landing. The altitude we want is 1500, so we're already ready there. That makes it nice and easy, and we've got our autopilot on. There's a few steps we've got to do. We want to just look on the map and work out when are we going to turn on ILS information. So we've got Nexus, and then we've got Nitro here. So anywhere past Nexus on the map, you can start putting on your ILS. We're going for runway 22. So if you want to practice yourself, you can do an ILS landing at runway 22. And as you're coming in, you're wanting to be turning on all these switches I'm about to show you, just somewhere after Nexus. Let the GPS get the plane turned and online for Nitro, and then turn on all these switches. Now we'll show you what we're going to push. We're going to be clicking here for the CDI. We're going to be changing that until it says nav mode. So that's the first thing that will happen. The other thing that will happen is we'll be clicking approach mode. We're going to be clicking the approach button. And that's basically the two buttons which I need to click when we get to the point, which I'm showing you on the map. So just after Nexus, just around here, we're going to be hitting the approach button. And then we're going to be clicking on this button here, the CDI, to change it to nav. Now hopefully this makes it so much simpler and clear about what you need to do to get this plane doing an ILS landing. What have we done? We've changed the navigation to the code that's required, 108.10, showing you what I was doing before. We've got our autopilot on, so we haven't missed any steps because you've seen how I have turned on the autopilot. By putting on the autopilot, we put on the altitude hold, and we put on the nav button. They're the three ones we use to get the plane holding at the moment. That nav mode is going to bring us all the way around to Nylon, to Nifty, to Nexus, and still give us down towards the route. What we're changing it to the other mode for the 108, what we're doing by clicking the CDI here and changing it into nav mode is to pick up the glide slope information. That's what's critical to us, and that's what we're trying to pick up. So we'll be picking that up by changing this from GPS to nav, and it will get the glide slope information because we've tuned in the correct frequency here, the 108.10. And then we're hitting approach mode to tell it that's what we want it to do. We want it to activate that. When we hit approach, it'll turn off the nav mode and it'll just go into approach mode. you do not have to hit in this plane. That's been tested, so you don't have to worry about hitting your alt. What will be good is that it'll keep us at 1500, and we'll be looking at this line here. So as we get closer to the point where the plane has to start descending, we'll notice this glide slope will come down to where we are. And once the glide slope gets to there, then the plane will actually start nose diving down with the nose, and it will start pushing us down towards the runway at the required 3 degrees to come in on the perfect glide slope. But it's really not that hard to do an ILS landing, so I wanted to concentrate on the planes you would use perhaps to fly around the world first. Although you might want to choose this plane to fly around the world, it is going to be a lot slower. But it's a great plane to be learning how to do ILS landing. It's a great plane to actually look at the scenery in a much slower form. Some of the other planes, the scenery goes past so quickly. But with this, you can really get to enjoy an area and really start noticing locations and think about it. And, maybe compare it with what you know in real life. So this plane certainly has its uses, and I know a lot of people use it for training and for general aviation. But it is a lot slower just for a flight simulation if you're just trying to have fun. So at the moment, we're going to come up to Nylon and the plane will by itself turn left. Someone did ask, why is this line pink and the other line's white? My only information I can say at the moment is that the pink is seemingly always either the active or something that we've just recently done, whereas white is something that's upcoming or something that has been done in the past. It's way behind us. Sometimes when you turn the autopilot on and off, you'll still have like the white lines way behind. So, and you'll have a pink line and a white line in front. So you can have like white, pink, and white. I have seen that. But yeah, pink is trying to draw your attention to that part of the line. I'd think of it like as a highlighter. Here, this is the part of the line that's relevant. You need to look over here because this is where the plane is going at the moment. This part over here is upcoming. It's important, but we want to draw your attention to this pink part. And that's really what I would say about the pink. But if you have any further information on that, please do provide it in the comments. That'll be great for everyone. As I say, I'm really just trying to show how easy it is to do an ILS landing in this cool little plane. We're just hovering along here. Now, we don't have to worry about gears. We don't have to put our gears out. We do have to put our flaps out. So we can put our flaps out. We don't have to worry about moving our fuel tank on left and right. The flaps are simply pushing F8 or F7 on the keyboard. F7 will do a step of it, and F8 will put full flaps. Just be aware, your flap switch is over here, or you can use obviously your keyboard, the F7 and F8 on the keyboard. So there's that. So this is your autopilot. That's the important part for us. And this up here is our Garmin GNS 530. And this is the one we use today. I put in the 108.10 on both of them. We're just getting over to Nylon. So as you can see, we're already into pretty much coming up to the landing part of this, which is great because that's meaning that this is going to be a short video. But I really still do want to show the full takeoff and landing, so there's absolutely nothing missing. It's very frustrating when you try to watch a video and you cannot make out all the steps because they've just included a small part of it. But as you can see, all I'm preparing to do from this point on is the CDI button. At the right time, we're going to change it to nav. And at the right time, we are going to change this button here, the approach button. We're going to push that one on this autopilot. The autopilot won't come off, so the autopilot will still be running. We just need to hit the approach. You can see our speed is very fast. I'm certainly not using any auto throttle. I really enjoy just using the throttle manually. But I will bring the throttle back just a little bit at the moment. We're in the green, so we're all good. I think outside we should be able to see Mount Fuji, and we will be able to, with all of the videos. I believe out there that's Mount Fuji. I have seen Mount Fuji in real life, so I have gone all the way out to Mount Fuji. Jump into the plane again. It's giving us the information here on what we're traveling between Nylon to Nifty, and we can see that here we're going from Nylon to Nifty, and again you can see it's in pink. It's trying to highlight, but this is the important part that we would need to look at. The information behind us is now in white, and the information in front of us is in white, but the pink stuff is what we need to be concentrating on. So it's really about drawing your attention to it as far as I can see. The important step to remember, if you're going to be changing this, you click in the CDI button, and to change it to nav, don't click this button, because we haven't changed put the right number in on this unit, the 430 on the bottom. So if you go and click CDI in here, it's going to be looking for 110.50, okay? And that's not going to work out for us. So the important thing to remember, which is probably important for me to mention, is make sure that you're clicking the CDI on the one that you've put the details into, okay? So in this case, we've got the correct ILS on this one, and we can click CDI on this one. Do not click CDI on this one and get confused. So that's probably a very important thing just to mention and point out. We need to click this one. Again, to swap between COM and VLOC, where it says push C/V, left clicking that once and it will swap between the two. You can see that. If you want to just be safe, you can just click it to get it out of the nav mode so it doesn't accidentally click over to something. You can just push it over and it'll just stay down here. That way we can't mess up anything with our navigation down here. But the important thing is you understand how to swap between the two. I'm just clicking that button to swap between. Some other things we'll be able to see, up here are some lights, the blue light, the yellow light, and the white light. As you're coming up for the landing and you're going past these markers, the outer marker will highlight. Now that will highlight from a long way out. When you're almost at the runway, the yellow one will come on and the white one will come on. They are much, much closer to the runway, the yellow and the white one. The blue one's a long way out. So, but do look at those lights. They'll give you an indication of how far away you are and if you're on track to be lined up for the runway. We can see it's got a little bit of change in here. So we're coming up to Nifty. And again, the point that we're going to be turning on this mode for the ILS is between Nexus and Nitro. Nexus and Nitro. So just after Nexus, the GPS will turn left a little bit, get ourselves lined up. As soon as I think it's lined up and it's not weaving left and right or doing anything crazy, that's when I'll activate it. And then that will be good for you to be able to practice with. You can see I'm not stressing with the altitude. What you might want to look at is just your speed. So I might bring us this down to about 100 at the moment. I don't want to go too slow because we're trying to get around this circle. It's a bit better. Generally, with your mixture, as you get higher in altitude, you're going to bring that mixture out. But just for this demonstration, I'm just trying to show you ILS. I'm not worrying about that. You're only at 1500 and you're doing a loop around Haneda. You won't have to worry about that. You can put all your attention into this ILS and making sure that you click the right buttons for the ILS landing. But once you do want to go up in high altitude, just keep in mind you would normally be playing with this mixture control and pulling it out a little bit as needed to keep your RPMs high. I want you guys just to make sure that you're understanding you're clicking this CDI and you're clicking this approach button. And you've got all the steps in this video. Now you can do altitude change. The Alt button in this plane is the VS button. So if you go and click this at the moment, hover above it, you'll see it says turn vertical speed mode on. So if I click that, I could then go and click on up or down, and the plane will rise or fall based on which button I clicked. And then you could go back to altitude hold mode when you're finally at the button altitude you wanted. You just left click this button again. And that's pretty much how you would change altitude with this plane. It's doing pretty good. We're coming around. What's cool is we can see Mount Fuji on our flight here. We can use it as a reference point. We also got this airport as a reference point. JTL. I think if we're looking on the map, that might be Mount Fuji. You can see the way we're looking at the moment, so basically it should be right in front of us. And so if we look out our window, you can see right about there, that'll be Mount Fuji. If you ever go to Japan, they will often say it's a very shy mountain, Mount Fuji, because it can often, you can go there and you will not see Mount Fuji. It'll be covered in cloud. So you can be arriving on a day that it is difficult to see Mount Fuji. So yeah, I have noticed that they call it a shy mountain, but that's where it is, and you can sort of see from where we are where that is located. Over here we've got Narita Airport, and then we're going to the Haneda one. Runway 22 is the one we're coming down on here. So runway 22, you can see RW22 just there. That's where we're heading to. So it's going to take this turn, then we're going to do all these steps that I'm talking about. We've got Nexus. So I'll wait for it to be stable with the wings. Let it get more stable. It's pretty stable, but we'll just make sure it's got there. Looks pretty good. And then we're still holding that 1500. You can see where we are, just between Nexus and Nitro. So I'm going to do what I said. We're going to go over to this one, and we're going to click on the CDI button. I'm changing it to VLOC. Then I'm going to go down to here, and I'm going to click on approach mode, one left click. And that is all. So now, the important thing is we're going to be looking at the information in here. And we're going to be watching this line here to see if it comes down towards where we are in the plane. Basically, what we're looking for is this is our vertical up and down, and this is our horizontal left and right, basically our wings left and right. But this is climbing in altitude or descending in altitude, going up and down here. And the glide slope is going to be up here. And as we get closer to the runway, this line is going to come down towards us. And the point we know this has worked is when our nose of our plane starts pulling down and bringing us down towards the runway. We just keep flying forward. We know we did something wrong. We didn't have the right number in here, or we clicked the wrong CDI, and then we've not got the right one. So we've gone and activated one of these numbers, and we've clicked that. They are some of the problems you could run into. Okay, so we can see ourselves, we're still lined up, and we're very, very much in line to go onto the runway. We're holding that 1500 really good. Now just take note, I did not hit the altitude mode. I've left that on in this video, okay? So I have not hit that button. All I hit was the APR, and I hit the CDI one. Now just check, when you're looking at CDI, when you go up to top here, it changes to NAV, NAV. If it still says GPS, something's wrong. You haven't clicked that button. It needs to say nav. Approach mode is on. And you'll say it says nav mode, because that means the nav mode is turned off. Down here we've got some information. Still a little way to go. But I think this is a good one to demo with. We've got some beautiful river here. So you'll notice it still hasn't descended at the river. If you're trying this out yourself, you'll know if you're at the river, you won't be descending at this point. It can be very expensive in Tokyo to get a taxi to the international airport, around about 400 US dollars. But you do have an option to try this other airport, or you can also take a train. Sometimes the trains are not running due to high winds, and in which case you can be stuck and not able to get to the airport by train. But at the moment, we're going to be landing in the simulation at Haneda Airport. So I'm just going to keep watching our plane. Going to give ourselves a little bit of flaps. I'm going to push F7 on the keyboard to give us some flaps. Down here you can see what the current modes are. So you can see it's an approach, APR. We know we've clicked the correct CDI button. And the other thing just to be aware of is look at these lights up here, the outer and the middle and the inner, which I was talking about before. We're also watching this line here. It is a good idea to keep an eye on what's going on outside the plane, especially probably in real life, because you're looking for other aircraft and planes, but I've got no other aircraft and planes in the simulation, so I'm really concentrating a little bit more on the information on our screens here. We've got Mount Fuji over that way. This is a point of reference. You can sort of see how we're coming into this runway. If I line ourselves up, you can see the runways down there. So it hasn't started descending yet. We're going to keep an eye on this line. I'm also going to keep an eye on our lights. So from this point, I'll probably stay zoomed in around about here. Approach mode is activated. Do keep an eye on your speed, but just at the moment, we need to look at this. We haven't begun the descent part from 1500 down yet. Should say VLOC in here. And you can see it says VLOC up here. Now, do you see up here it's got a flashing light blue on the outer? Does that mean it's the outer marker? So we've just passed the outer marker. Still a little way to go, but you can see that's that one. So that's one to look for. I didn't have to do anything to have that come on. If you're just learning, you can look for that light. You'll know you're on the right path if you're seeing that. Now, do you see this line here? It's coming down. This is coming down to meet us. Now, we're here, we're always at this point basically. So when this white line gets to us, it's then going to start pushing the nose of the plane down and we'll start descending. I just want to make sure we see that point, and I may jump to an external view just to make that obvious. You'll notice the altitude here will come down, so the 5 will go down to the 4 when this white line hits this point here, and we'll start descending. And then I'll jump to an external view just when we get the 5 to the 4. To make it a little bit more obvious that the nose of the plane is going down. We can also look here, the vertical speed, this will go down, it'll point downwards. So 3 things are going to happen. The nose of the plane is going to go down, this is going to start descending, and the vertical speed will come down. Do you notice here? Vertical speed has been pushed down. Altitude's now coming down to 4. We're hovering just around 5, 6 here. Altitude's coming down. Altitude's coming down. This line's staying with us, but it's pushing us down. So it means we've locked on to the 108.10. Remember, all I had to do to activate this was I had to push 2 buttons, CDI and approach. So don't think that you cannot do an ILS landing. It's not that hard. Hopefully this video will really help you and keep the steps nice and clear. My workload is pretty low at the moment. I have time to look outside. You can see we're lined up very well with the runway. I'll try and give ourselves a bit of view, which makes it more obvious. But you can see here's us and there's the runway, okay? The plane's doing all the work at the moment. I do not have to use the throttle. I do not have to use the joystick. Now the next thing to look at is your markers. Now as I say, the middle one and the inner one are very close together. There's a big gap between the outer and the middle, basically. But the middle will be almost when we start and to come down on that little section down there, you'll get the middle, and then the last moment you'll get the inner one. What we need to worry about right now is this, the speed. So you'll notice I'll start pushing the full flaps, and I'll start to get our speed down. I want to get our speed a little bit closer towards 60. It's still on autopilot, so the plane will manage the descent, despite me putting the flaps out and changing the speed on it and doing all these crazy things. The last step to remember is we're going to have to disable the autopilot. To do that, we're clicking at one button. We're clicking this, the AP, okay? It's separated from the rest of the buttons, so you can't mess it up. The AP button on the very far left, this one here. We have to click that one button to get our control of the plane back, AP. As we come down to the runway, we'll just have another look outside. You can see just how well we're lined up. That's the ILS landing. As I say, please do give this a go. Do not think that you cannot do an ILS landing in this plane because it's got all these crazy dials and technical information. It's not that hard. All we had to click at that point was CDI and approach, and it's gone and put us into that mode. We did all the hard work earlier when we put these numbers in. Okay, just keeping an eye on my speed. You can see we're doing 60. We're doing this so easily. I'll turn off the autopilot when I feel comfortable by clicking that button, or when I think I want to stop describing things to you guys. So we're about now. We can turn the autopilot off, and we're just going to hand fly it in, basically. You can see we're almost in the ground. Very, very cool. And I'll just give it back to idle, and you can do a tiny flare. And you can just use the rudder pedals to keep yourself straight. You can bring your flaps up with F5 on the keyboard. We can have a little look to see where we want to taxi to. I might turn left off here. My real aim was to show just the ILS part without too much information in this video. I'll very quickly go through it just before or around when we shut down the plane. Probably not going to taxi in a realistic location here whatsoever. But there's no other players. I've actually turned off other players at the moment. And I've also made a clear sky so we can get the best frame rates so that we can record this video as best as possible. We can taxi over here towards these gates. A general aviation plane would not normally come here, but that is the fun of the sim. We can bring our general aviation plane here, and we can go, you know what, I want to park here. Okay, awesome. So we'll just bring that back, and we can put on our parking brake, because I'm happy with where it is. So after we took off, or before we took off, we went and changed the CDI to GPS. I just quickly switched it to GPS mode. The GPS mode was important because I need it in GPS mode to activate the nav. Then once in the air, we hit 3 buttons. We basically put the autopilot on. We engaged the autopilot. I then clicked the nav button. The nav button so that it would follow the line around. And then I finally clicked the altitude hold button. The 3 buttons: autopilot, navigation, NAV, and altitude hold. and the plane was sitting in GPS mode. And I made sure of that by clicking the CDI button and putting it on GPS. Then we had to change the numbers up here, the VLOC. To swap it, we had to get it from COM first to VLOC, so don't get stuck and start changing the numbers first. Make sure you get it across to VLOC. Click the push C/V button to get it over to VLOC. Then use these the knobs to turn it around, change it to the number you need. The outer one for the 109 and the inner number for the little 15. So the number on the left and the number on the right after the decimal point is the smaller number, okay? Is a smaller wheel on the inside. Then once we got all that information in there in the VLOC, there's only two things we had to do to actually activate the landing. We had to click CDI to put it in to nav mode. So it'll change this to VLOC and also change up here to NAV. You'll know it's on NAV, that's good. And the other thing we had to click was approach, APR. So hopefully now you have all the steps to be able to do this. If you want to do a very quick shutdown of the plane, you can just pull the mixture all the way out. That'll cut the mixture, and it's all good. We can push down here to put the fuel valve, and I can turn off all the switches, and I can turn the key around and take it out. It's a very, very quick shutdown. If you want to follow the correct procedure, please do, but you'll notice I've got my parking brake on. We're not even parked in the correct location here today. But we have achieved our objective, and that is showing you how to do an ILS landing as quickly as possible. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to subscribe. I really appreciate all subscriptions, comment, and like the video. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time in the next video. Bye for now.